Warning, this episode contains graphic language, dead dwarfs, long fables, and as always, teen angst. Also, there will be spoilers for chapters 7 through 9 of The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm by Christopher Paolini. Listen at your own risk.
Is this a podcast, or is this just fantasy? We're just two nerds and we love our fantasy. So join us if you want to nerd out. Time to start the podcast and see. Anyway, here's the show.
Hello, readers. I'm Dane Patterson, the host who has never faced his vermin, but would win if he did.
Bold. And I'm Jacqui Lanier, and is this a podcast or is this just fantasy? The podcast where we also have been known to spend hours upon hours retelling stories of emotional healing. We only have one way to be. Whoops.
If you'd like to support us on Patreon, there's a link in the show notes. And if you can't or just don't want to, we totally understand. And just ask that you please rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
And as always, visit us at isthisjustfantasypod.com and follow us on social media. We are on the TikToks at isthisjustfantasypod and keeping it real on the gram at justfantasypod. I'm really trying to get in my cool girl era, Dane. Is it working?
I
Have
love
I
it.
crushed it?
Wow. Well, we're 2/3 of the way done.
Yes.
You're in your cool girl phase.
That's me.
I'm just got through the Angela situation. We're both in places.
You're recovering.
Yes, and now we're about to dive into this. I think this one's going to be longer than the last two episodes, probably.
Well, Dane,
I don't know. I didn't read the largest chunk.
It's written already.
I
don't know if you know. But
is this
we
actually longer,
prepared
though?
notes.
I didn't even... Did we prepare notes? Where are my notes?
I think
no,
technically the shortest script we wrote was last episode. This one's a little longer, and the chapter...
I don't really know why. My chapters were the same size.
The fable in this section is half of the runtime of the book, The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm. So there's that. I'm going to summarize it, and I think I will take... This is a bold statement, so hold me to it.
All right.
I think I will take slightly less time than the audiobook runtime to retell the fable. That's my goal.
That's the hope for all of us.
It's good to have goals, I think.
Well, then we better dive right into it.
Do you want to kick us off, Dane?
Yeah. Chapter 7, Deadfall. In this section, we come to Eragon.
I like that guy.
We're back.
Hey, I know him.
Yeah. It's spring, and Eragon is gardening and raising up some tobacco.
Hell yeah.
Because the dwarves need their sweet, sweet weed, dog.
Hell yeah, brother. Why live in the middle of nowhere if you can't grow your own weed?
It's so funny. He's working with the dwarves, and we learn that not only is he still working on learning their language, which is surprising to me, as he learned the ancient language extremely fast.
That's true.
And he's also learning Urgal, which is very nice of him. He needs to be a man of all people.
I think so.
Yeah. We get a lovely flashback from Eragon that wasn't his own. We learn that the Eldinari are doing this quite regularly, which I have to say must be a wild experience. Talk about a drug flashback.
I know, God. It'd be horrible sometimes, especially because dragons' lives are
different.
Probably violent.
But it's all the
writers
they had too. So he's just getting and they feel like his memories.
Truly insane. Cannot imagine.
How would that change a person after a few decades, I wonder? It's insane.
Yeah, what Eragon will grow to be. Just living his life under the yoke of...
thousands of other people and thousands of years. I mean, in our real world, you need to be on ketamine to see different perspectives and make new pathways in your brain.
I guess
Eragon
that's true.
just needs that sweet, sweet dragon soul magic. Always getting high. He starts to wear tie-dye, very Wheel of Time, matchroom coffin with tie-dye.
Yes, that was the vibe I got, the way Matt Cawthon just is always getting flashes of the great generals of history.
Yeah.
It's that for Eragon, but just regular dragon and rider stuff.
Well, they're also general. I think it'll help him the way it helped Matchroom Coffin.
Hopefully.
Because they were all generals and war leaders and magicians.
I was just going to say help him to what? Get hanged and then get a really sweet new spear? Or
Spoiler alerts for that 20-year-old
Wheel
or whatever.
Of Time. Apologies, dear listener.
Yeah, well, Eragon's not bothered by these flashbacks. He likes it, in fact, and sees all this information and different memories of the dragons as something to study and learn from.
Very healthy.
He's extremely healthy
Yeah.
here. I'm glad we get this moment because it really is a foundation of Eragon as a person from book one.
You think?
He likes to learn.
Yeah.
He likes to just be oh, that's nice. I feel like this is a general Eragon vibe we're getting.
That's true. I guess when you put it that way, I'm like, I'm surprised he didn't just say, oh, I'll deal with that later.
Well, you've got Arya, who's like angst incarnate. You've got Murtagh, which is depression in a person. You've got Rorin, which is like rage. You've got like Nasawada, who's like honor and like arrogance in like personality form, and like then you got Eragon, who's like, I like to learn, and like, you know what I mean?
Wow, a savage roast of every character in the series.
I mean, well, maybe I'm wrong. That's happened before. I think we also get a tidbit that the memory came from a dragon who died in a storm, and I like this too, as it's a good reminder that the writers are not invincible. They're just really tough.
Yeah.
Storm brought that dragon down, man.
Ugh.
Especially after the Murtagh chapter at the beginning of the book, it just serves well to make these all seem less powerful. You know, he killed a room full of people or 4 people with a fork. So it's nice to be like, but also wind.
Sometimes, I will say, I say this often as a wedding planner. I deal with a lot of, well, in Southern California, where everyone gets married outside pretty much exclusively. I deal with weather. I deal with extreme heat. I deal with rain. I deal with much cold in the desert at night. Like my least favorite weather event is the wind. It is the most difficult. So in this way, I really relate to these dragons. It sucks out there if it's too windy.
If it's too windy, it's bad.
Yes.
Then we got Arya thoughts.
Yeah.
They have scried together, but you know, they're both so busy. It's been hard to really talk on the phone.
Yeah.
It really reminds me. Okay, did you have a friend in college that was still dating their girlfriend from high school? I had a few of them. This reminded me of that,
Not
like,
me.
because
Couldn't have been me.
because they would always be like, oh, they're so busy with studying and so am I. And then you would like be drinking with them for the 7th day in a row. And then you're like, you're not that busy though.
Yeah.
It was like clear
We
these
just
people
drifted because, like, you know how busy we both are.
Yeah.
We just like really each have our own thing going on, and that makes us stronger together.
Right. And it's like, you are clearly going to break up. You just don't know how to do it right now. This is what this feels like.
Yeah.
It's giving college girlfriend vibe.
100%.
Yeah. Despite this, Eragon is feeling good. He's the clueless type.
His self-care worked.
Yeah, the main hall is finished in this new writer hall,
Yes.
and I'd love to see that. I would just love to see what this looks like.
Yeah.
Also, 3 dragons were able to move to be moved into the Hall of Colors, or their Eldenari were, after Elva's therapy work.
Yes.
Over the winter. Which
That
is,
actually was like pretty quick. That she just had some success.
it's a 3-month turnaround.
Yeah, kept it moving.
3
I'm like,
dragons.
a dragon a month. Fuck yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, you'd be through a big chunk of the Eldenari in like 2 years, right?
Yeah, she could do that in a few years, make it her life's work.
Yeah.
Anyway, we learned Eragon might be happy that Elva and Angela are gone, which hard agree, Eragon. Hard agree. What really struck me here was that Eragon trained Elva like Braum and Oramus trained him.
Yeah.
Like a dragon rider?
Well, I feel like
Is there stump time? I thought that was riders only.
it was supposed to be riders only, but I think what Eragon maybe internalized from that experience is like, it is difficult to, I mean, the scariest thing is to have power without wisdom. And so stump time is aimed at like understanding your place in the world, right? And I think that's what he's trying to impart to Elva, which makes a lot of sense. You would hope that she has.
Well, we don't know it was stump time, but I'm just saying maybe.
I think that would make sense.
That makes sense to me too.
Yes.
Or it could make sense that he meant like he looked up to both of those people as mentors, and like really what he learned, you know, like with Oramus, he learned that he loved poetry. And with Braum, he learned that he loved the sword and like learning, just reading.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe he imparted wisdom. Like he was like, I was a mentor. I don't know what it was.
The options include stump time, wisdom and enlightenment of the universe, or maybe he said, here's kindness, practice it.
Yes.
Those are the 2 teaching
knowing
styles.
Eragon, I'm thinking it's the second one. But I don't know.
Which I would love for him.
Yeah. Whatever it was, it seems to have loosened Elva up.
Yes.
She was less mean to him, it seems.
That is good.
And obviously, Angela didn't tell him where they were going when they left.
No, why would she?
Which is hilarious. And then, boom, there's action. Eragon is pulled into the hold by a frantic dwarf as one of the old tunnels on the lowest levels has, like, the doors were reopening them. It collapsed.
Oh, shit.
This place sounds intense.
Yes.
Saphira can't go down there. It's really small, so it's not for dragons.
Yeah.
But she's standing by to help.
Yeah.
They get 4 dwarves. There was 4 doors where this collapsed. Eragon then connects to literally all the dragons.
Amazing.
Like in the Eldenari hold.
Yes.
And he just lifts up all of the rubble, all the stuff that was tunneled out and just melds it back into the wall as if the rock had never fallen.
It was pretty fucking cool.
It
I'm
was
not gonna
pretty
lie.
cool.
I was like, oh, he's a god.
So yeah, he could just do anything. The
Yeah.
two dwarfs are unfortunately dead. He did not get there in time,
Yeah.
which is extremely sad as he can't really do anything for them. Eragon falls down on his knees and cries, and because he knows these people, all these people have been living together
Yes.
just in this place.
Yeah.
So good for Eragon, though, that he is modeling mourning without shame.
Yeah.
I really felt like this was, I know it maybe seemed a little melodramatic just in this short stories. It just, he is crying. But I did like the mourning instantly without shame.
Yes, he definitely seems like a big lead by example guy. He's always been very preoccupied with like, what is it to be a good person? What is it to be a person in charge, responsible for things?
Yes.
And I think that tracks here.
The dwarves are prepared to be entombed in stone, and Bloodgarm and the elves use magic so the collapse, they help him with the collapse area more. The elves seem unaffected by this death, but the humans in the group also seem pretty sad as well.
Yeah.
When we remember that the humans and dwarfs tend to get along the best.
Yes.
The Urgals then surprised me when I was reading, and they drink to the fallen dwarves.
Yeah.
They also have been with these dwarves the whole time.
Yeah.
Eragon stays up and drinks with the Urgals as they tell him he's too sad. And so... cheer up, bud.
They're like, hey, we're sad, but you're like too sad.
So the Urgals tell Eragon a story. That's it.
Yeah.
The storyteller gets a drum and begins to tell a story.
The drum, the whole like aesthetic of the beginning of the storytelling, I really,
cool.
really liked.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's intentional on Christopher Paolini's part or if it's just like a piece of phrasing he likes, but I picked up on this a little bit of like a student becomes the master moment in the very last paragraph of the opening of this section, because Eragon is giving the storyteller Ersk almost exactly the same review that Oramus gave his own poem back in Eldest when he was like rough but true.
True. That stuck with you. I
Yes.
think this is another time you've brought this up.
Oh, I bring it up, I feel like, all the time.
Yeah.
I just think it's so hilarious. What a like weird thing to say to somebody.
You grew up as a dancer too.
Yeah.
Rough but doable, I guess.
Yes. I don't know about this, but like I can tell you're expressing your thing and there's some worth in that.
Gold star.
Yes. So that does take us to the meat and bones of this, Dane. Chapter 8, The Worm of Kulkaris.
You got this.
We start this Urgal tale off with some high drama, and I love picturing the Urgals as a bunch of like artists and poets prone to embellishment, just like in the storytelling style.
Yeah.
They're talking about the day death came to their valley in the form of an ancient and cunning dragon named Vermund the Grim. And I actually went back to double check this because the name sounded familiar.
Yeah.
Vermund was also the name of the evil dwarven clan chief that Auric got banished this dude when the elections were
And
happening.
the political
back,
maneuver.
Yes, back in Brissinger.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what kind of crossover do you think there is in this universe between dragon and dwarven naming conventions that they share this name?
Well, maybe I actually thought about this.
Okay.
Maybe this story is very old.
Okay.
And the Urgals and the dwarfs have a storied history of like hating each other and warring with one another.
Yes.
And the Urgals over time named the dragon after like his name slowly melded into
Became a dwarf
a
name.
dwarven name.
Yeah. I
And
could
that
totally
sounds
see
right
that.
to them because they're like, oh, vermin or whatever. You know what I mean?
I had the opposite take when I was thinking about it for the same reason.
Oh, okay.
I just thought it worked maybe the other way around.
Okay.
Like the dwarves somehow heard this story and they were like, you know who's hilarious in that story? The villain. And started naming their dwarven children the name of the terrorizing dragon.
Okay, I like that better.
No, I think they both, either way, maybe both things happened on separate timelines, like parallel evolution.
Maybe Angela's involved somehow. Maybe this is in the library.
Oh, yeah,
and
Angela's here.
Yeah, oh, yeah, Angela's here.
But back to the dragon.
Yes.
Vermund,
Oh, sorry.
Not the dwarf.
Yeah.
We see him rampage around through the eyes of a young girl named Ilgra. So she's going to be our main character here in this fable.
Three
She's-
short stories, 3 young women.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct. And I will say, the plucky Essie from tale number 1,
Yeah.
really liked, got into, and I really end up liking Ilgra. Ilgra's very fun.
What about our cursed witch baby?
Ilgra ends up having to watch as the dragon crushes her family's home and incinerates her dad.
Oh, no.
Dane, this story's sad. A
Okay.
man is dead.
Sorry.
So Ilgra's having a pretty shitty day at the community pool, basically. She's like up at the pond with her friends when all of this goes down and a dragon just terrorizes her village.
Yeah, that's a bad day.
Yes, but she did see from afar, she saw her mom and sister get away before Vermund ate as much of the clan's herd as he could stomach and set fire to their entire valley. And apparently this dragon is much like me, because once he's uncomfortably full, he flies off to take a little nap by curling around the highest mountain rimming the valley, which is called Kolkaris. So the few survivors of Clan Skaro regroup on the far side of the valley, and the dams, they're called.
Yeah,
and
the ladies.
Yes, I'm like, these are lady Urgals. And is this, I can't tell if dam is just lady Urgal generally, or if it's like the women's circle or like the women's council.
I'm pretty sure it's just the ladies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
but remember, the ladies
they
are the rulers of like the
yes,
Urgals, right?
I think so. We got dams in here.
Yeah. One
aside about this fable, it is just from the Urgal point of view. It's in the Urgal voice, and from without explaining any of
there's
their
a lot of assumptions that you understand how they
a lot
work.
of jargon, I guess, a lot of specialized idiosyncrasies. So we're left to kind of parse some of this stuff out. So I was thinking dams are the ladies, and then the Herndal, that's the women's council.
Yes,
is that right?
They're like elder council. Yeah.
Okay. My only other thought was that the dams was the council, and the Herndal was the leader of the council.
I think Nargajbra. I think Nargajbra does say dams when referring to like other Urgals like getting a mate.
Okay.
Which leads me to believe that like that's just like all the chicks.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I digress. The dams decide that the citizens of this clan are going to stand their ground, return to their homes, bury their dead, prepare for another fight with the dragon for when he comes back. They spend close to a week hiding before they start doing all of this checklist of jobs. And Vermund has not so much as stirred in his nap in a solid week. So the warriors start thinking they might be able to sneak up on him and kill him in his sleep, which makes sense, logical enough. Ilgra has sworn an oath of vengeance on what she refers to as a murderous worm, but her mom thinks she's too young and untrained to entertain any thoughts of going on this hunt with their skilled warriors. But Ilgra's no fool. So she picks a spear, and what does she name it, Dane? The spear?
Yeah, it's revenge.
I know. I was like, we love Ilgra.
Sorry, I was so enraptured with the story. I was like, I don't know. You didn't tell me yet what the spear's called.
It's called Revenge.
Hell yeah.
And she christens it with her own blood to execute her revenge plot.
That's revenge.
That's metal as fuck.
That's hilarious.
She leaves her mom to join the war band, and I'm feeling like Ilgra is just such a badass. So how old do we think she is?
I don't know.
Like 12, 13?
I think she's too young.
Like, yeah.
I think it's like 12.
Yes, after how metal that was, my immediate next thought was like, oh my God, how little is she? This is a child. So this very violent child joins up with the warriors to pull their dead from the wreckage of their town. And when she finds her dad's body, she cuts off one of his horns as she prays over him before carrying his body to the pyre with everybody else in the center of town. It's a very grim scene as the warband collects body parts and ashes into the pyre because it's very important to their culture that everybody be burned after death.
Yeah.
So they're just scraping together whatever they can find, and they light all of it up as they scream their grief and vengeance into the night. It was very evocative to me. But the sleeping dragon, they thought maybe we'll rouse our enemy with our
anger.
Yes, with our ferocity. But the sleeping dragon does not give a single fuck.
Well, we've met dragons. They tend not to.
Yes, that is kind of their thing. So the warriors end up making camp for the night before taking their Urgal Team 7 up Kolkaris for a little climb by murder in the morning.
Climb by.
Ilgra stays in the charred village with the bulk of the warband while the strike team sets up for a classic midday massacre. But as the sun ticks its way overhead, the Urgals on the ground don't see the dragon die. They don't see anything happen. And it's clearly in their line of sight. And somebody thinks maybe they hear a faint scream.
Yeah.
And it isn't until very late into the night that 4 battered SEAL team members limp back to say that Vermund had heard their approach and caught them with his tail before they escaped back down the mountain. So things aren't looking good.
No.
With one failed assassination attempt behind them, the rest of the survivors decide to just start going about their business in the valley again. They're like, well, life goes on.
I guess we have a dragon mountain now.
Yes, and they're just like on high alert for any signs that Vermoon might want his own revenge for the whole mountaintop murder attempt thing.
Yeah.
But the dragon continues to sleep, so Ilgra and her family move into what remains of their uncle's house, which she's not thrilled about. I thought it was a little bit funny. She was like, nobody wants to live with their weird uncle. And she's like, but it's kind of fine because his house doesn't smell like fish. And you're like, what?
Is this a problem?
Yeah.
Is this a thing that happens?
Common Urgal problem. I think the like refugee camp they made outside of town was some dude's house that smelled just apparently horrifically like fish. So I guess like that's what we can call good old fashioned optimism from Ilgra. Her family spends about 2 weeks like getting back to their routines, during which time Ilgra makes her father's horn that she took into a horn, but like a cool one she can blow in battle.
I was like, what?
Yeah, she fashions the body part horn into an instrument horn.
There it is. All right, cool.
So after a fortnight, an Urgal shaman comes to town saying that he's had a premonition, he's the one who's supposed to kill Vermund with his magic. So this shaman heads out for his hike with a little magic show for the town. He's really a pizzazz kind of guy. And late that night, we can see that he has clearly pissed Vermund off. There's like a bang of light and Vermund like roars into the sky. And Ilgra notes that the shaman wasn't a little bitch about it, but Vermund still totally lit that dude up.
Yeah.
So he did fight back, but the dragon was like, no, absolutely not.
I got the vibe of like, when you're like sleeping and someone comes into your room and turns on the light and they're like, sorry, I have to go get this real quick. And you're like, ah! That's what happened.
I think that is exactly what happened. Yes. And Vermund, after all of this, after he just chars up a little magic man, he just curls right back up. Goes back to his nap. Yeah. Is a creature of comfort.
He's sleepy.
He is sleepy. So Ilgra starts to despair that if even magic doesn't work, like, what is she going to be able to do about it herself? She's like, oh shit, I am but a mortal. Yes. This might not work out with my humble spear.
Her and Roran have a lot in common.
Yes, I think so. Well, only for now. Because never fear, training montages here, Dane.
Yeah.
We see the Urgals rebuilding their village out of sturdy stone and provisioning some hidey holes in the foothills. So they're making plans. They like have a good handle on what life is going to be like under the terror, the
dragon occupation.
Yes. So Ilgra during all this time trains to fight. And apparently the year turns all the way through autumn into winter while the sleepy little BB naps on top of Kulkaris. And the young warriors start making solo climbs up the mountain to see how close they can get to Vermund without waking him. And Ilgra listens to their stories to inform her own revenge plot. So like we have all of this, like for now it's peaceful, but why don't we gear up for the next attack? And Ilgra is training with like the best warriors in town and is hearing about how they're sneaking closer, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. She just is like single-minded, I think. Another thing she has in common with Roran. Yeah. But as the first snow falls on the village, Vermund finally wakes up to continue his reign of terror. Only it's just kind of like, meh. It's like the ambush is like mid. The clan gets up in their hidey holes, like they have plenty of time. Yeah. They see him get up and they're like, okay, everybody get to your safe room. This is why we
have drills.
Yes, exactly. Like everybody get to the bunker. And the dragon only eats wild game, not livestock. And he only sets one small fire and then he goes back to nap time. And everybody's like, well,
okay,
I think this will work. I think we're fine. I don't think we have to move out of our valley. They like love their valley.
He's like a weathered pattern.
It is exactly how that shakes out. It's like exactly how I think ruling council thinks of it. They're like, we can't change the weather. We can't change this. And pretty much everybody except for Ilgra gives up on their bloodlust, basically. But to her credit, Ilgra is still hitting her revenge plot hard.
Good.
She is acing her trial of passage in the like warrior group and finessing her plan to climb Kulkaris and surprise the dragon. So she's like hasn't missed a beat. And we cut to her first attempt to slay Vermund, and it goes horribly awry. After an exhausting climb up the steep ass mountain and painstaking preparation, she's like up at the top of the mountain, just like inching around silently for like hours to make sure she's able to surprise the dragon.
Gotcha.
She's thwarted when he blinks at the exact moment her spear is about to stab through his eye. So she like bounces off his armored scaled eyelid. And she's horrified to discover like she's no more than a speck to this massive beast. The indifference of it all is like more than she can bear, because she like, I think ends up connecting consciousnesses with him basically. And she's like, I'm not alive to him.
Yeah. I'm like an ant to him. Yeah.
And so with that, she slips off the top of the mountain, falls like dozens of feet. And it's a bit of a mixed bag, the falls. Sure, she breaks her leg, which ends up disfiguring her for life. But she also finds the shaman's magic staff.
Yeah.
As she drags her ass back down the mountain. And I love her consistency, because just like her spear, she names the staff Revenge.
Hell yeah.
So from there, we're whisked away with Ilgra on another training montage. Her, like, even though she ends up growing into a cull, which they call the Anointed, so she is extra big, and that's a place of honor among the Urgals, she can't be a warrior anymore because she has this limp. But lack of ability is nothing in the face of single-minded bloodlust, so Ilgra pivots to fixate on the possibility that now she might be able to kill Vermund with magic from the shaman's staff.
Okay.
So this is where we take a turn from Roran. Parallels, unfortunately.
He's now different.
Yes, he did try, though, remember? He wanted to...
Maybe he is somewhere out there in
still
Alagazi.
doing, here's a stone. I would believe that, yeah. So, conveniently, another shaman...
His nose is just bleeding.
Is he 11 from Stranger Things? So another shaman conveniently rolls up in the village, which is very helpful for Ilgra. And she wins a bet with him to force him to take her on as a student. And he spends 3 months teaching her the ancient language and how to wield it. And I liked the little detail in here that she isn't a natural magician. She's not good at this. Yeah. Like, it really takes her a long time. But she keeps grinding, like getting better on her own when her mentor heads back out onto the road, and struggling to impress him when he returns. And she keeps at it for years, apparently, until the shaman finally deems her worthy to even just use the staff. This is like step 1.
Yeah, he's like, okay, you completed the first of our units.
Now you can play with your toy. And she discovers he like unlocks the secret of the staff. The gem set in it contains a massive reserve of energy. Dope. I'm picturing it like Brahm's ring, honestly. The description of it was very cool. I really like the Urgal perspective on this, you know?
The Urgal perspective is the best part of this whole thing.
Yes. Yeah. She gets a warning to preserve the energy at all costs and add to it whenever she can as she continues training. And eventually she's able to join her mentor as he wanders to aid other clans. So she levels up enough now to head out on the road with him. And I'm getting big like gap year in Europe vibes as Ilgra gains perspective in her travels and appreciates her home more than ever. But none of this world expanding lessens her drive for revenge. You're welcome, Dane.
I appreciate her in this way.
Yes, I have to imagine she's like the top of the heap of characters who don't matter at all in this universe for you.
Yeah.
You know, like of all the people who just have no bearing on the story, she's number 1.
Yeah, she is everything I want in a vengeful character.
Hell yeah. At this point, 4 years have passed in this fable, and I think I've spent just slightly less time summarizing it, so I'll try to be quick with the rest.
Okay.
The Skaro are raided by a neighboring clan, but a vicious growl from Vermund chases off the intruders. He doesn't even fucking move. He just growls from the mountaintop, and the other girls are like, never mind. You keep your valley. We're good.
Right.
We're good. We're good. But Ilgra still hates his ass. She's like, I don't care. He's not protecting us. Fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Her mentor pronounces her a fully cooked shaman now, but he knows she's still hell-bent on this vengeance and advises her against it by telling a fable within the fable about his own wife. But of course, she's not to be deterred, and she sets off on a course of isolation from her clan and family as she builds a trap for Vermund in the form of a dam up in the mountains. So she's like, listen, I appreciate that you've told me a fable, but we all know fables suck, right? Yeah. I'm going to keep on my revenge plot. And you're like, what?
Wait, we're in a fable.
I'm just like, are the Urgals like trolling us? Are they a little funny?
I think they are funny. I think there is an undercurrent of humor with the Urgals always. Yeah.
Yes, I liked it. I think a little bit of... I liked their take too, that as Ilgra like isolates herself from everyone she's ever known or loved, like her community doesn't really bat an eye.
Yeah, she was a weirdo.
Well, shamans, right? It's kind of their whole take. And you're like, Okay.
You mean the deformed, focused person over there? Yeah, she's a little kooky.
She's probably fine, though. Just let her be alone. You're like, no. Isolation makes things worse.
Yeah.
But her mom and sister are pissed that she's still on this revenge quest. But she just keeps on keeping on, building her dam, doing the bare minimum of her shaman duty. She's like really phoning it in at work. And several more months pass like this until her dam is done and her trap is ready for Vermund.
Yeah,
she's like, the next
him.
time he wakes, it's on. And this takes us to beloved holiday of the pod, winter solstice.
Heck yeah.
And Ilgra heads into town to party with her clan when they're attacked by 2 leather blocka.
Oh.
Yes, Ilgra can only compare them to monsters she's heard of in legend. And I, again, really liked seeing the Urgals' perspective on these like eldritch horrors. And even more than that, I liked their name for them, even though I am not going to be able to pronounce it. But I listened in the audiobook. It's like Inrech, which is just like, what a good word.
It's a good word.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, I liked the leather blocka vibes here.
Yes, it sounded super ominous. It is so fitting for them.
Yeah.
So Ilgra is petrified during the leather blocka attack, feeling helpless and having some light PTSD from the first time Vermund set upon the Scarrow. In fact, she finds herself hoping the dragon might hear the attack and come down to lay waste to the leather blocka. And she uses her magic to clear the storm so that the sound of her father's horn might reach Vermund. So she actually tries to make this happen.
Yeah.
She calls the dragon and it fucking works. He does not wake up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, though. He's not a happy, just like you said, when you walk in the room and turn on the lights. Yes. So he swoops down in a rage to attack the leather blocka, but the 2 smaller beasts are faster than the dragon, and the fight is looking pretty bad for Vermund as Ilgra races to try to lure them all into her trap, all 3 of them.
Yeah, which as an aside seems to be a problem with the larger dragons
Yes.
that we've seen over and over again.
Yes,
They're just
absolutely.
less agile. Yeah.
And it ends up really proving to be
a problem for them.
Yes, a deterrent or a detriment to them in battle. I thought too it was interesting. I don't know how this necessarily fits into the world or the lore, but Ilgra observes that the leather blocka seem to have fought dragons before. Like they seem to know their way around Vermund's like battle tactics, essentially, which I was like, oh.
It kind of makes sense that this is an ancient story.
Yes.
And this is like maybe around, remember like when Oramus kind of like dabbles on like, we may have like eradicated them.
We may have like done a genocide. Uh-oh.
Yeah, it sounds like this might be during that time period.
That totally makes sense. That's what I was like. It stuck out to me a little bit. And I was like, oh, right. Dragon leather blocka flights. Awful.
And it also makes sense for Vermund to actually, maybe it's not so much the horn and more the leather blocka that he's upset about. You know, they're like natural enemies.
Sense them or something.
Yeah.
Yes. So when Ilgra tries to lure all 3 beasts into her trap, she is again too insignificant for Vermund to notice when she tries to make mental contact.
Yeah.
But the taxidermy dad bits come to the rescue again when an epic horn blast draws the dragon into the ravine with the leather blocka in hot pursuit. And this bitch waits for the perfect moment to spring her trap. It was a little tense. I was like, do it now, do it now.
Do it.
But she waits until the moment is ripe, and she uses the reservoir of energy in her staff to break the dam finally, and it works exactly how she pictured. All 3 beasts are knocked out and crippled, with one of the leather blocka dying immediately.
Yeah, she just straight up killed it.
Yes, and her sister, Ilgra's sister, chooses this opportune moment to roll up to say, I'll help you kill the dragon. I also want to do a revenge plot. And you're like, not now. And chaos ensues when the second leather blocka rises. It's blinded, but it still wants to,
kill things.
Murder.
Yeah.
So Ilgra chooses saving her sister over slaying Vermund, who's waking up. And as the girls are losing the battle with the leather blocka, Vermund swoops in to kill the nightmare monster. So it is very tense. A lot of suspense, I think. I definitely thought the girls were going to die. I thought that's what this fable was about.
Me too.
I thought the moral of our story was fuck around and find out.
Yeah.
So with this leather blocka finally slain, Vermund turns his attention to the 2 sisters. And Ilgra, again, is a real badass here. She holds her ground. She stares the massive dragon down. And after all these years, all this effort, what she gets from Vermund basically amounts to like a bro-y head nod, like a
see you.
Sup. It's incredible. She's happy with it too. Yeah. But I guess we'll chalk it up to a win because he doesn't barbecue them. So I'm like, I guess I'm with her. This will work.
I will say when I was lifting one time, this like big buff guy from across the gym saw me lifting and then
Gave
nodded,
you the vermouth.
and I was like, oh, thank you so much.
I crushed it.
Yep.
So after this, the battered dragon drags his ass back up to his mountaintop perch, and with a massive roar and spray of fire into the night sky, he tucks himself back in for his next little nap. And the fable wraps up with Ilgra recognizing that her place in the endless cycle of predator and prey means that whether it's Vermund or another monster, something will always plague her. I'd be hesitant to call the place she comes to acceptance, although that is what she renames her staff. That's very much the point of this.
Yes.
For me, reading it, I'm like, I don't know that you've really internalized that yet.
Yeah.
But she resigns herself to living her life to the fullest every day with her clan until she takes it upon herself to confront Vermund again.
Revenge never dies.
No, I guess not. It's not exactly a happy ending, but these are the Urgals, I guess. It makes sense for them, I think.
Thank you for doing that fable, by the way. That was a lot to read and do, so I appreciate it.
I had fun. Again, I think like it's not something weirdly I'm going to talk about in analysis, but the Urgal parlance, the Urgal voice, like
it's fun.
All their turns of phrase. It was like the first time we were in Saphira's POV and we saw like the interesting things she calls different creatures and the way she sees the world. It felt like a very extended version of that to me. And there's a lot of fun there because we like their famously. You love the Urgals.
I love them. Yeah. That takes us to chapter 9, New Beginnings.
Yes.
And that was a doozy.
Yes.
It is a fable. This last chapter of this little book starts with Eragon feeling like he's waking up for a dream. And I love the Urgals. I know he loves the Urgals. And the bard gets headbutt and everyone laughs. It's dope.
Yes, I feel like the flashback is like the lead into the story where like their ceremony around storytelling is very fun to behold.
It's really fun, and they like to party, which I love about the Urgals. Eragon realizes that he is up past his bedtime, but it was totally worth it. I feel you, bro. I feel it all the time. He feels better now and seems grateful for the story. I totally get it. I remember seeing some movies that have made me like bad things in my life feel better when I was younger. It doesn't have much now, but when it does, it's dope. So I think we can all kind of vibe with Eragon in this. Eragon asks Saphira what she thinks, and Saphira, of course, is like, well, that fable was dope because the dragon won, obviously.
Never change, girl. Never change.
And Eragon then asks if the story is true to the Urgals. And the Urgals seem really confused by this, saying, quote, we would not tell you a story that said wrong things about the world, writer. And when Eragon explains what he means, he's like, no, did it actually happen? They say they don't know.
Does it matter, dude? It's a lesson.
It's a lesson. He's like, it's a very old story, and it might be true, it might not be. Regardless, the Urgals explain that it's a good story nonetheless, and that there will always be a Vermund, someone you cannot best in the world. And Eragon,
unless it's you,
unless it's me, unless they actually say that, unless you're Dane. And then he was like, who is this mysterious Dane? Anyway, Eragon feels like he's growing because he totally agrees. There are some things he can't beat, some things that are inevitable, like death, even if he's going to live for a very long time. Death is still going to get him. Eragon thinks he would have been frustrated and bothered to know this when he was younger. But now he doesn't like it, but like that staff, he names it acceptance. He accepts it. Acceptance is peace, he thinks. Acceptance is happiness. Happiness is fleeting. That whole thing. Yes.
I mean, I do think it ends in a place that is like more profound than not. Maybe we're making a meal. Maybe just you're very profound and reading into it.
Oh, thank you.
All I can picture Eragon thinking is like, yes, I vanquished my own Vermund. But little did I know another shadow loomed large in front of me. The scourge of bureaucracy. Just like
the malaise of life.
All he's thinking is like, I fucking killed Galbatorix, the most powerful, most evil murder wizard. And you are right. There is more trial in front of me. There's more strife. Look at all this paperwork. Like, what?
It is funny, too, because then Eragon reflects on the leather blocka, and he's like, oh, that was a little weird. I wonder what that was about. But he's pulled out of his reverence when the elves, of course, when the elves and the Eldenari are all stirred up. And the elves approach Eragon in like a total like hurry. And the best part here is all the Urgals, like, I just love this. All of the, like, everyone knows something is going on, and all the Urgals run up, all the elves run up, and all the Urgals stand up and like get behind Eragon,
like draw their weapons.
Like they don't fuck around. They're like, we got you, dude. Don't worry, we'll kill elves for you, dog.
You're like, what? Are we all friends here?
Yes, I was like, what? Turns out though, Dragon Egg has hatched. There is now going to be a wild dragon, I assume.
Yes.
I don't know for sure.
They don't specify, right?
They do not. Like, because this could even be one of the ones that was traded and they just heard about it, I was thinking about. Like, one of the ones that's going back and forth.
Shit.
So we have no idea. I guess it could be a bonded dragon somewhere far, but I actually think it's a wild dragon, but what do you think?
I think it's a wild dragon, too.
Yeah.
I think that was my initial gut reaction was like, oh my God, more wild dragons. And then it took me a minute to be like, I guess it could be bonded, but I don't like that as much. I don't really know why. I'd prefer it to be a wild dragon.
No, I would love the first new dragon order to be led by a human and the first new dragon rider to be an Urgal. To me, that would be hilarious.
Yes. Strong agree.
The elves just like crossed arms like...
They would be so pissed, Dane.
Oh, we forgot Arya. Never mind. And we forgot Murtagh. Basically, we forgot 2 other characters.
Lol.
Yeah.
We're deep in the lore,
Yeah, we're
everybody.
deep in it.
We're really experts on the inheritance cycle here. It is This Just Fantasy Pod.
Well, we're 5 books in, all right? This is...
And you just really love the Urgals. You're
I do.
I don't care about anyone else,
Who is
anything else.
Arya? Who's Murtagh?
I can believe you forgot about Arya. I cannot believe you forgot about your emo baby boy.
I'm looking for Nakashbra.
That would be... could you imagine if he were the next dragon rider? He would rule the world.
Oh, he would take
It would be over
Eragon.
for-
He'd be like, hey, Eragon, you can sit down.
It would be over for all these hoes.
Yeah.
He is the smartest. He is the most well-educated.
Yeah.
He's the most artistic.
Yeah. He's the best at everything.
Miss Nargashbra. I do, though, before we call it a day on this book of short stories, I do have one final little teeny BB analysis section.
Okay.
It's time for analysis.
I thought it was funny because of everything in this book. This final section is the one that so clearly has a theme. Mm-hmm. And in analysis, that's usually what I do, but I'm not really going to talk about it. I just feel like inherently fables are intended to make their point so clearly that the lessons in them will be learned by children.
Yes.
So I'm not going to make a meal about how this dragon story taught us the first phase of the Serenity Prayer. Not that it isn't totally a lesson I need reminding about. Constantly.
Yes.
I just think it's right there to grab onto, like a staff named Acceptance. One thing I did want to mention, though, that we kind of hinted at in the last episode is that I know in the afterword, Christopher Paolini talked a little bit about his writing process for this collection of short stories.
Yeah.
And it actually started with this fable as a creative exercise while he worked on Fractalverse. Then it sounded like the Fork story came to him as a way to catch up with Murtagh, which clearly was an interest of his for a while.
Yeah.
Evidenced by the entire book he wrote about Murtagh. And then to round out, like, make it a long enough book for publishing, he let his sister write the story as her namesake.
Yeah.
So when it came time to actually produce this little book, Christopher Paolini had the idea to tie the stories together with a framing device that gives the fans some little glimpses of Eragon sprinkled throughout. So I think framing devices really seem prominent in the discourse about this book. For me. I will explain it a little.
Go for it.
I just think when we looked at the Goodreads reviews for this book, it seemed like the framing device was the thing that ended up pissing people off, like really at the heart of it. I found it really interesting that people were so up in arms because when I read this, it immediately makes sense to me why Christopher Paolini would use a framing device when you don't have to in a book of short stories. It's not necessary, but it's like, he wants to give the fans little glimpses, little catch-ups with his characters and then publish the stories he wrote that just take place in universe. Yeah. So, and like in a way that I feel like is just low stakes. He doesn't have to make a meal of it. Yeah. But it clearly ruffled a lot of feathers for people expecting maybe a short story or a novella versus a collection of short stories. They felt, I think, maybe like they were getting one narrative that was too disjointed in this book without enough focus on their favorite characters. Like the reviews were a ton of, we barely heard about Eragon, and when we did, he was so sad, and Arya wasn't even in this. Yeah. So I think maybe like that might be a marketing and expectations problem at the end of the day. But I just thought it was a little funny reading through the reviews, thinking that this just is a book of short stories. It just is a collection of different things. And maybe it makes sense that is not really a form factor that gels with people who love epic high fantasy series over time. Like,
I don't know if that's what it is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we might just disagree here. I think I think the problem is just that this was so long after the series
Yeah.
that people, I don't even think it was marketed, frankly, other than what it was. I think people wanted it to be what they complained about, it not being. That's what they wanted it. They read it and they were like, oh, I'm disappointed that this isn't what I wanted.
Well, a lot of the reviews said,
yeah,
I was marketed a book of short stories.
Well, because I know I bought it in 2018.
Yeah.
I did not think it was going to be like an Eragon book. Like, I knew it was going to be short stories.
Yes.
And I assumed that they would probably be about things I didn't know about to flesh out the world, right? Maybe that was just me. I do think the problem with the device in this book for me is there's not enough short stories, and the short stories that we have are either too short or one is too long in comparison. And if this was 7 short stories with this device, I don't think people would have had a problem with it.
Yeah.
Because you would have had a lot about the world. You would have been like, oh, this was a totally different thing than I expected, but we did get to learn a little bit more about Eragon.
Yeah.
This book is so short, though, that it's like, this kind of is a through narrative with Eragon. It's not so much a device as like a weird story about Eragon's 6 months. You know what I mean? And I think, for me, I like reading short stories. I found this to be a little disjointed in that way, where I was like, I get it. I don't think it really nailed it, which is why a lot of people who love Eragon were like, I get what you were trying to do. I don't know if you nailed that. I don't think there's any problem with it. I just think the lackluster is also because, like, for instance, the Angela story is very short.
Yes.
And the Murktide story is extremely short. And then this other book is half the book.
Yes.
So
pacing definitely is a whole other.
If it had been 5 more, if it had been like, 3 more stories the size of the Angela story, I think that would have made more sense because you would have been like, oh, this is great. But it just doesn't.
No, the pacing of this book is, I think, a separate maybe issue, at least for me. But I think
you liked it. You liked the device, and you liked you didn't expect it not to be short stories. You weren't in the marketing group that was like, oh no.
No, I think I read a lot of feedback of people who were like, we're telling this Eragon story and none of this other stuff matters. And it's like,
people wanted the plot.
I'm like, I think by using the framing device, maybe he shot himself in the foot a little bit because people started they think there's a narrative here. And it's like, no, it's not even. It's not supposed to be that. It's not supposed to be. Yeah. It's just like a little cohesion, a little.
Well, I think even if this had been a fantastic, everyone loved it, people who never run the series or love this book of short stories, I think you'd still have hundreds of reviews where it was like, this is not the area. This did not continue. Why did you do that? Even if he had nailed this perfectly, I think there would have been a lot of people who were upset because it just wasn't.
Yes. And I think at least from what I was reading, it seemed like the cohesive comment is like, this is not the bill of goods I was sold. And then I think Christopher Paolini has responded to that criticism over the years in a lot of ways. Yeah. I think he even wrote the afterword to kind of front load addressing
I don't know if that
is.
helped him. I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that afterword actually made it, from what I could find on Reddit, made it worse because people were like, well, it sounds like you just wanted to sell a book.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I'm not against.
No,
it's his
I
job.
guess that's the thing that I'm like, I don't know why people get so mad about that. Yeah. I'm like, of course he did.
I think people like, here it is. I think, again, even that would have been fine if the other books had been coming out. You know what I mean? I think from the fantasy standpoint and not from the Fractalverse universe. I think that the problem ended up being that he did try to fix it with that afterwards. I don't think that helped. I don't think it helped because the people who were upset are his fantasy readers, not his sci-fi readers. And I think that there was no winning necessarily because this wasn't a continuation. So no matter what he did, there's going to be lots of grumpy people.
Yeah.
And then the size of this with his device he chose was a weird combination, I think. I myself thought it was all right. Like because I'm one of those old fantasy readers who was obsessed with this as a kid who got this and was like, well, I almost feel worse because I got my toe dipped in and I didn't get what I wanted, and I don't have no clue in 2018 when I'm gonna get any more. Yes. So you brought up the memory of my want. Now I want it more. You know what I mean?
It's funny too because I even think about it like at that point in time, Inheritance was just done. Like there didn't ever have to be any more, and for
He'd always said there was going to be more, though.
Yeah.
Like literally from Inheritance. He was like, yeah, there will be more. I have plenty of stories. There was supposed to be like a Brahm story prequel
See, now that.
which I was very excited about.
Brom and Jode on the road.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think this is complicated. I think it's one of those books that's fun. I actually think this is good for him because I think it's good for the fans because I think books like this, divisive books, get more people talking about the earlier stuff. Maybe they go back to it. I bet there was people who were like, I haven't read it in a decade. I'll pick it up. And I think it brought new people into the series. So like, I don't think there's a loss here. I do think for those fans who are like, I'm going to go on the internet and respond to how this pissed me off, I think they were the ones that were upset, but they were probably going to be upset regardless.
Yeah, that is famously, what are the haters saying?
Yes,
like they're
basically
always saying something.
Yeah,
especially fantasy fans. I think maybe that's also why I look at it like it's just a hard sell in a lot of ways, like to take the same universe that is, I think, like people get very mad at Patrick Rothfuss about this too.
Yes.
Like to take the same universe where you are knitting like a layered and like long game epic payoff story and be like, look at these little guys though. Do you like it? Do you like it? And I just think a lot of those fans have a harder time being like, well, what is, I think that is a lot of the, what is the point? What are the stakes? Why am I reading this?
I think that you can point to someone who does this very well. Joe Abercrombie. Joe Abercrombie has tons of standalone books. I mean, I think he has like 5.
Yeah.
But he produces lots of books. So like you're never worried that the world is not going to be completed.
Yeah.
So he's always creating more, which is a little bit different than him and Christopher Paolini.
Yeah.
And then those books seem to be self-contained stories that don't take away from while giving what I think they're doing what Patrick Rothfuss is trying to do with his world, but are good enough where you're just like, it's okay. You know what I mean? I think there's a way to do it. I just think you have to do it very well. And I just don't think this was done to that level. But, I think this was fun. I'm glad we went over it because I honestly have read this only once.
Yeah.
And so I had not spent much time with this book. And especially going into Murtagh, I wonder how much of this, what we learned about Urgals is going to be in this. I wonder if we are going to hear about what's going on with Eragon. We do have the Nasawada, wizard police. I'm hoping that shows up.
Yeah.
And I know that people that like both this and the Fractalverse maybe got something out of the Angela story that maybe you and me did not.
Yeah.
So I think in some ways this is really cool to do before we step into the newest book.
Yeah, I think so too. I really liked the Murtagh story. That was such a strong start to this book that did give me that immediate, I'm glad to be back.
Yes.
This is worth it for me to come back to the world because this was fun. Murtagh was fun. And now I have questions going into Murtagh's book.
Yes.
That I'm excited to get answered. As aforementioned, my least favorite story was the Angela story, but this point of view of the Urgals, I did really like. It was very long, as we have harped on again and again.
Yeah.
But I really liked their perspective. I thought it was a fun story. I liked Ilgra as a character.
Yes, she's great.
Yes, taught me a
revenge
lesson.
too.
Yes, in many, many, many ways, Dane. Over the course of Inheritance Cycle, you have colored my vision.
Well, here the real thing is, I would have killed Vermund. So I think, for me,
it just is so hard to relate.
Hard to put myself in that situation.
That totally
you know what I mean?
Makes sense for you.
And I think on that note, perfect place to stop. We will be doing Murtagh, so stay tuned for our posts. Probably will be, I don't know, what do you think, a week or two? We don't really know at the moment of this recording, but probably in a week or two.
Probably a couple weeks.
Look on our socials. We will be doing it. But thank you for listening. Make sure to rate and review, especially on Apple Podcasts. Support on the Patreon, and check out our social media at Is This Just Fantasy Pod on TikTok or at Just Fantasy Pod on Instagram. If you have any questions or just want to write to us about how I'm wrong about this book, or if you want to get mad at Jacqui about how she's wrong about it, we love to hear from you, and you can email us at isthisjustfantasypod@gmail.com.
Or is this just fantasy? We're just two nerds and we love our fantasy. Come on and listen to us next time. Find out what our deep dive will be.